The federal courthouse in Virginia felt colder than any winter morning Sarah Martinez had endured during SEAL training. She sat in her wheelchair, the silver star pinned carefully to her blazer, its ribbon a small burst of color against the dark fabric. The medal had been earned in Kandahar during an operation where she had held a position for 7 hours against impossible odds, her legs shattered by an IED but her rifle still speaking defiance until her team could extract civilians trapped in the compound behind her. That day had cost her the ability to walk, but it had saved 23 lives. Now she sat in a custody hearing fighting for her daughter, and Judge Richard Thornton presided with a kind of arrogance that came from 30 years on the bench and a belief that his word was law, divine and unquestionable. Her ex-husband's attorney had painted her as unstable, her disability as evidence she couldn't properly care for an 8-year-old girl. They used words like limited mobility and psychological trauma as weapons, twisting her sacrifice into something shameful, something that made her less than capable, less than whole. Judge Thornton leaned forward, his eyes narrowing on the silver star. "Ms. Martinez," he said, his voice dripping with condescension, "this is a family court, not a military ceremony. Your attempt to influence these proceedings with displays of your service record is inappropriate and, frankly, manipulative. Remove that medal immediately, or I will hold you in contempt." The courtroom went still. Sarah's attorney stood to object, but Sarah raised her hand, stopping him. She looked directly at Judge Thornton, and in her eyes was the same steel that had kept her fighting when her body screamed to surrender, when death would have been easier than enduring. She spoke quietly, but her voice carried to every corner of the room. "Your Honor, this medal was awarded by the President of the United States for valor in combat. I wear it not to influence anyone, but because it represents a day I gave everything I had to protect innocent lives. It represents who I am as a person, as a protector, as a mother. If you find that threatening or manipulative, then perhaps the problem isn't with my medal." Judge Thornton's face flushed red. "Contempt," he barked. "Bailiff, remove her from my courtroom and I'm awarding full custody to the father. This woman clearly has no respect for authority or the legal system." The bailiff hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, but moved toward Sarah. That's when she reached into her bag and produced a small recording device, holding it up for everyone to see. "Before you do that, Your Honor, I think everyone should know that 3 days ago, you had a private lunch with my ex-husband's attorney at the River Club. I have photographs. You discussed this case, my disability, and how best to ensure I would lose custody. I also have recordings of similar meetings you've had in 4 other cases over the past 6 months. Cases where you received campaign contributions from the prevailing party shortly after." Rendering your decisions, the color drained from Thornton's face as quickly as it had appeared. Sarah continued, her voice steady and relentless. "I did not want to believe that the justice system I fought to defend could be corrupted by a man who used his position to play God with people's lives. So I investigated. I spent 3 months working with a private investigator, documenting your pattern of bias, your private meetings, your financial connections to attorneys who regularly appear in your court. I filed a formal complaint with the Virginia State Bar yesterday. I also sent a complete report to the FBI's Public Corruption Unit this morning." The courtroom erupted. Her ex-husband's attorney was frantically whispering to his client. The bailiff had stepped away from Sarah, uncertain of what to do. Judge Thornton gripped his gavel, his knuckles white, his career crumbling in real time. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. What could he say? The evidence was real, and everyone in that room knew it. Sarah wheeled herself closer to the bench, looking up at the man who had tried to use his power to take her child away. "I learned something in the Navy, Your Honor. When you see corruption, when you see someone abusing their power, you don't just accept it because they wear a robe or carry a title. You fight it with everything you have, even when you're outnumbered, even when it seems impossible, especially then." Within 3 weeks, Judge Richard Thornton had resigned in disgrace, facing multiple investigations into his conduct. The custody case was reassigned to a new judge who looked at Sarah's record, her home, her unwavering love for her daughter, and made the right decision. On the day the ruling came down, granting Sarah full custody, she wore her silver star again, not as a display or a weapon, but as a reminder that some battles are won not with weapons but with courage, integrity, and an unshakable refusal to let corruption triumph. Her daughter ran into her arms, and Sarah held her close, understanding that the most important mission of her life had just been successfully completed. Sometimes justice doesn't come from the system, but from those brave enough to hold the system accountable.